friends, I'm Rick and this is your seat at the table, and we are talking all things Battletech, and today we're looking at Redemption Rift by Jason Schmetzer. Well, my apologies if I mispronounced his name. I tried to do a couple book reviews before, and they don't get very much interest apparently. Compared to my other videos, I get 40 or 50 hits on the average video. These, if I'm lucky, I'll get 15, but is what it is. So like I said, in the last year or so, I started really kind of seeing a rebirth of interest to me for my Battletech material, and I've started purchasing updated new material, and some of it, once again, there's just so much material out there, I'll never catch up on it, and that's a pity. I'm looking forward to there's like a big historical book coming up that's supposed to link everything together a little bit, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. That will be a purchase I'm willing to make because it may help fill in some crucial gaps in the last 20 years. I'm not exaggerating. Like I said, I dropped out about the end of 2002, and I didn't really re-engage until about a year ago. So it's been almost 20 years. So a lot has happened in 20 years. A lot of material, a lot of stuff, and a lot of novels that I'll never get to because it just isn't enough money in my. Unless I was lucky to win the Mega Millions, which apparently somebody in Illinois did last night. It won't be me. Anyway. So we're looking at the Dark Age of 3139. The famed mercenary regiments of Wolf Dragoons have returned to the employ of House Kurita after a century of bitter enmity. Somehow the mercenaries and Kuritans must find a way to work together in a combined invasion of the dragon's oldest enemy, House Davion. Thrust in the middle of this new conflict, Colonel Henry Kincaid is surprised by the commonalities, duty, honor, expediting, the Wolves and Combine forces share. But as the Wolves' lightning tactics and unstoppable drive brings world after Davion world under the Dragon's banner, old hatreds rise anew, and with them come the insidious plots engineered to cause the mercenaries' downfall. Throughout the campaign, Colonel Kincaid struggles to rectify what he thought he had always known about the Kuritans, with the truth he discovers while actually working with them. But when his forces are trapped on a Davion world with no way to escape, and the regiments of House Davion closing in, can he pull off another bit of genius from his hat, or will the battalions of Wolf Dragoons be destroyed? So, in a nutshell, basically, a lot's happened to the Wolf Dragoons. This takes place just prior to or during the Wolf Clan's engagement on Terra in their bid to take Terra as the Ilkhan. So, elements of the Wolf Dragoons, it's interesting to note that the makeup of the dragons themselves have radically been altered over the century. A lot has changed since the early days, and including how they're deployed and how they're made up. So apparently they have several line regiments that are tactically used differently, and then they have these what they call striker battalions, and they have two. They're working on a third, and Kincaid is leading this kind of group, and their role is to literally strike at the opponents, where the line units hold the ground and or come in for traditional line combat roles. And so the exact makeup of the Dragoons at this point I haven't a clue because the book doesn't really touch on this. While Kincaid's off doing what he's doing, the leadership of the Dragoons is co-opted by an agent from Alaric Ward, and they all rush off to Terra to help the Wolves take Terra for the Ilkhan status. And there's some that's yet to be explored, or it has been explored in some form that I have yet to have the privilege of reading. So I'm kind of stumbling around a little bit on trying to fill in the blanks there. But I know, according to her Redemption Rights, which is the book that follows us in the Dragoons saga, and I'm currently in the middle of, I understand a bit more of what happens after the fact. But in this book, elements, they're hired by they were working for the Steiners, and then they go to work for the Kuritans, and they're expecting some pretty low. They have there's a lot of resistance within the Dragoons to be working for House Kurita in the first place because they're sworn enemies for 100 years. Lots and lots of bad blood, lots a lot, lots of bad hate and discontent between these groups. Now, the coordinator and the Karenni, the warlord for the Draconis Combine, have decided that these are an elite unit and they have extremely good skill set that they want to tap, and that they want to try to maintain that goodwill and make every effort to show a different sort of House Kurita. Still, nothing changes with the Kuritans, but I think just it gets shortchanged a little bit. The bad guys in here are not some deep conspiracy group or some really well-established warlord or regional sectional war. Like the original Wolf's Dragoons, the conflict took place, and that set them into a head-on conflict with House Kurita was pretty high set motivated. This one's more like some punky ass dude with, or a small group of dudes who have an axe to grind, in part because they resent having to work with the quote mercenaries in the first place, because that aspect really hasn't changed. House Kurita, the Draconis Combine in general, don't treat mercenaries well. They look down on them. Their samurai traditions and their samurai pseudo traditions make them believe that pay soldiers for hire, people who sell themselves for coin, are less than honorable. Which we know from fact that there's a lot of mercenary units that actually fit that bill, but there are quite a few that do not, and that their honor, once again, the Wolf's Dragoons should, what they did to the Koreans in the first go around should explain to these misguided Combine citizens that the Wolf's Dragoons value their honor and their commitments highly. Anyway, so while part of the Dragoons are off fighting House Davion for this section called the Rift, it's a section of Davion's space that's being contested between the two. I guess the leadership of House Davion is the current first prince is focused on the Compellan front, and this some kind of belief that the Compellans are up to some sort of Compellan trickery, and he's totally absorbed by that, and he ignores most of what's going on. So it's left in the hands of secondary generals and regional theater people and nobles, which, if you think about it, a lot of places that's how this works. That the houses are still significant in size, and the top head can't be everywhere all the time. Now that doesn't mean that I'm sorry if I'm not remembering the fellow's name, because I haven't read enough of the stuff to get that in my head yet. But the first prince doesn't deem this as something worthy of an issue. Although this is probably a mistake, because this is opening the door for what will come in the next few years, and it's that mistakes build upon it. But the Dragoons part in that, it comes to a conclusion. So these striker battalions are having success. They're basically steamrolling over top of all the encounters that they come against the House Davion's second line troops. They occasionally butt up against some frontline, top-notch, top-tier elite units, and then have some issues, and then they withdraw. They find themselves on this particular planet, and outnumbered and outgunned, and they do a credible job of holding off and holding on, of the understanding that their drop ships ran for the jump ships and booked home to get help. What they don't know is that there's no help to come, because the bulk of the Dragoons have gone to Terra. And Colonel Kincaid does not know this at this point. So he's paired up with the Ryukin once again. And there's the elements within the Ryukin that have political motivations, or just hate and discontent for the Dragoons and for mercenaries, period, that are trying to stir up and cause trouble. But they're not a cabal of anybody important. They're not some high-level noble or military, commander who's wants to throw a wrench into this make mercenaries more palatable mindset of the Karenni, than just some punks, in my opinion, that don't know their place, and they get had, and they pay for it, and good for them. And they do a couple pretty nasty stunts and pull a couple nasty things, and it's just kind of petty in a way. And not really from a novel perspective. That's not the sort of thing that's really uh, something that the caliber and level of the Wolf Dragoons in history should be dealing with. But it also gives us a window in more realistic kind of petty BS that a lot of merc units have to deal with whenever they go wherever they go, especially if they're being hired by a house that they're not on good terms with and haven't been for some time. So it's after this, another year or two later, the Wolf Dragoons are devastated. They've got to regroup, and then they move on uh, uh, to the Free Worlds League and move on to redemption rights, as well as the Empire Alone source book, which I'm just now finishing reading on. That's one of the new ones I bought. I bought. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. I mean, I picked up what is it? Tamar Rising was the first source books of the modern age I bought, and I'm hoping to try to keep up with these from here on out, but it is what it is. Anyway, Redemption Rights, or Redemption Ripped, is an excellent book. It's a good insight into the current elements of Wolf's Dragoons and gives us a little bit of the insight into interstellar players' perspective of what's going on in the Draconis Combine and on the borders of the Federated Suns just before the Federated Suns make a big faux pas, and the Koreans take a huge advantage of it. And I haven't seen that section. I don't know if there was a source book created for it or if there's another set of novels. So I don't know how they got from here to conquering New Avalon, but I look forward to eventually finding it out. Anyway, this is Rick. Until next time, I hope you guys have a great weekend. And remember, Battletech's on the rise. That's another topic I'm starting to see. I've seen a lot of videos in the last few months where there are players and video content providers who believe that Battletech's, whatever reason, Battletech, the current franchise owners. So in this case, a Catalyst comes up with a plan or a plot and it throws something into it and they don't like it, and that says, well, this is the end of Battletech, everybody just throw your books away and go home. And that's not necessarily fair. I made that mistake, and I really wish I hadn't. Of course, there was circumstances financially and personally that made it nearly impossible for me to try to keep up with any effort into my game material at all. Is the world gets in the way and you have to make choices. Sometimes they're not so good. Sometimes you got to fix those mistakes and so on and so forth. Uh, Game creators are no different than that. So when FASA bellied up and FanPro and WizKids took over, they tried to put their own spin on it. They tried to build on what was already there without radically altering it. They weren't trying to remake the wheel. They were just trying to bring a new set of challenges and dynamics into the Battletech universe. And some of it turned out to be fairly well, and some of it really did not do well. What turned me off specifically, was when the rise of the sphere, the Republic of the Sphere, saw this. We're going to turn, peace across the inner sphere, and we're going to, turn our swords into plowshares. Well, then they started introducing things like when the Dark Age and the Jihad. I missed the majority, but I started getting into the Dark Age, so the first 5 or 6 novels, and then we start seeing this renaissance of more and more non-battle mechs being used. So we see this uptick of desperation where we're going to Frankenstein mechs together, and we're going to use industrial mechs and farm agri mechs and et cetera, mechs that are not meant to be used for what they're being put into, because I don't know, we want to sell more miniatures, we want to sell more books. We just really went off on a deep end, and the hole was deeper than everybody thought it would be, and nobody liked it, or quite a few didn't. And then toward the end, they tried to retract from that. They tried to readjust it. They tried to make things a little better, and then they lost the franchise. And however it converted from them to Catalyst, I don't know. And Catalyst has been around for a while before I got back into it, and I'm starting to look at some of the stuff that they put out in the last 4 or 5 years, and I realized that Catalyst as a group have done a really good job of trying to get the Battletech back on par with where it ought to be. So that said, there's been a resurgence. Now, another video I ran across yesterday kind of tripped a bell with me, because the guy was saying, "Oh, I used to go to when I went to my game store, and there's absolutely nothing on Battletech." And when I asked them, they said they just can't get nothing because there's nothing to get. At that point, the game's finished. Just throw your stuff away and start something else. And I felt that same way for a while. I mean, I've gone out to bookstore. My original game store, the man retired, it's long gone. There's still a couple game stores in the greater Des Moines area, and they have absolutely, I won't say absolutely no Battletech, because that's not true. Mayhem Comics out on the west side does have the occasional Battletech material crop up on their shelf. But they have the same situation with the internet, and with print on demand, and with PDF, this rise in PDF usage. I mean, like I said, this is why I prefer this over a PDF, because if I do a PDF, as I've said before, I have to have a physical version of this. I can't have this PDF sitting on my computer, because I wouldn't be able to utilize it when I need or want to. And I wouldn't be able to interact with the physical item and my computer at the same time, because for obvious limitations. And I don't have the finances to operate multiple computers. The truth is, it's also a space issue, because what you don't know is sitting behind this laptop right now is my other laptop from a couple years ago. And I hope in another year that this one will be about 3 years old next year. It'll be time to be replaced. But I kept my old one for emergency purposes. So if I had to figure out a way I could use 2 different laptops at once, unfortunately I can't afford software and security software. So that other one will never get hooked up to the internet again. It would be something for just, dumb usage. But we're back to I don't have a lot of physical space. It's a small house, and I share with my wife has a lot of stuff, and I have this table. I'm grateful to have this table that I have, but if I spent all day in here, she would kill me. I mean, so I have a little table out there out front in the living room that's just enough room for my laptop and a drink and a few things, but I could never have 2 sitting there, not without radically changing my corner of the living room, and then having to go through a bunch of discourse with her over that. So, not that you guys care anyway. But what I get at is I'm seeing a resurgence in Battletech between some of the issues with Games Workshop and 40K. A lot of the 40K people who never got into Battletech are waking up to Battletech, and we're seeing a resurgence in this. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of a new era in Battletech popularity from the tabletop game perspective. The video games dominated. That was another thing that I never got into. It's apples and oranges. You can't afford both. If you're lucky, you can, but if you don't, you make a choice. If you're into the video games, you stay in the video games. You get the consoles. I've never owned a console in my life. I'm just being truthful. If I had any video games, I had to run on my damn computers, and my current laptops are quite significantly more powerful than my towers and stuff were back in the 90s and early 2000s, but they still don't have the capacity to run those really high-end graphic video games very well without causing issues at some point. And then there's the cost of these damn things. And I'm back to that. It's just not for me. And I can't take it with me to work. I can take this with me to work. I can sit in my work truck in the middle of the night or the middle of the afternoon while my truck is pumping stuff out of somebody's pit, and I can read and I can study. I can make notes, but I have to physically have stuff with me. It's just the practicalities of it. Anyhow, if you guys haven't read this, I recommend it. There's some excerpts online that if you can't afford the book, but you kind of want to get a gist of what's going on, recommend looking them up. If you're a Wolf's Dragoons fan, this is a good book too. Till next time, Hope you guys have a great weekend. This is Rick, and your seat at the table.